Zach was talking about the what ifs of this Denver Nuggets season. And his what if was them not making it to the Western Conference Finals. And what happens if that's not the case? ZB said that basically if the Nuggets do not get to the Western Conference Final, that Michael Malone could be in trouble and in jeopardy of losing his job. Now, Zach and I have kicked this back and forth a couple times. We haven't had a full conversation on it. Maybe we'll have to do that at some point. I'm just going to have to bombard him on his Mile High Hoops podcast at some point. I think he's completely wrong on that. I don't think it's Michael Malone that gets got if this thing doesn't go well. Now, to Zach's point of them not getting the Western Conference Final, that being the bar, I think that's fair. If you don't get there, some changes have to happen. The change is not Michael Malone. I can almost promise you that. It is Calvin Booth. Calvin Booth would be the one to go. And I know hierarchy says and suggests otherwise, but man, the things that I've seen, Will, working with the team, for the amount of time I did, the relationship that I've seen been built and now flourishing between Michael Malone and Nikola Jokic, Michael Malone and even Jamal Murray, that relationship there, I literally think there is a 0.000000001% chance that no matter what happens this year, Michael Malone gets got. Calvin, you need to worry about your job, my man.
Well, it's really interesting you bring that up because Zach Lowe had the report a couple weeks ago. I wrote about it at denversports.com that there are rumblings. I love the word rumblings. Yeah. People are gossiping is what this means. That there is a rift between the Denver Nuggets head coach, Michael Malone, and the front office. And we all know front office means Calvin Booth because you mentioned Nikola and Jamal. I think Michael also has a great relationship with Josh Kroenke. And the conclusion of my article was, and this isn't anything new, I mean, we know that Malone wants to ride with veterans, Booth wants to go younger. It's like philosophical differences between the head coach and GM. I mean, Zach Lowe, he was a big insider who put it out there, but anyone who's listened to your show or any shows on the station for the last 6 months knows this has been a thing. That said, I concluded my article saying if this season goes awry, and I would agree with Zach, I think awry is not at least making the Final Four, the Western Conference Finals, then Josh Kroenke's going to have to make a decision between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. Before I heard what you had just had to say in the last few minutes, I was like 75% he'd pick Malone, really? 25% chance he would pick Booth. And the only reason I said that is because NBA coaches get fired all the time. Championship coaches get fired all the time. Nick Nurse, Raptors, fired. Mike Budenholzer, Bucks, fired. The dude in the bubble, who's the dude in the bubble for the Lakers, got fired.
Vogel.
Frank Vogel, fired. So that's the 2019, 2020, and 21 champions all got fired.
Yeah.
Nuggets won the championship in 23. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. But after hearing what you had to say, I'm not going to do your .0000001, but I'll adjust my percentages to 80-20. That 80% chance if they don't make the Final Four of the Western Conference Finals, he would fire Calvin Booth. 20% chance he would fire Michael Malone. I guess we have to account for he would fire no one, but I'm with you. You can't waste Nikola Jokic's window. And if Josh Kroenke was willing to fire George Karl after he won Coach of the Year, if they flame out again this year, I would assume either the head coach or the GM goes. And I'm with you. I lean toward the GM, just not as strongly as you.
Okay. And look, I'm not saying Zach's clueless on this conversation by any means. Zach's a great hoops guy, knows what he's talking about when he's talking ball. But it's just the relationships. I didn't even talk about the Josh stuff that you brought up, and it's a very good point on your part. That's a tight-knit group as well. And look, it's Michael Malone has proven he can win an NBA championship with the right roster. The roster that he won an NBA championship with, it wasn't Calvin's, right? There were some pieces from Calvin, but the majority of that is still Tim Conley and his crew. Now, Calvin gets credit because he's a part of that staff, but it's not 100% what Calvin did. I commend Calvin a lot. I give Calvin a lot of credit because he got Will Barton off the team, and that was always a disaster in my opinion. You needed to get that guy off the basketball team, and you add the pieces that he has added and draft guys like Christian Brown. Of course, I give him some credit. I just can't look at it and if I were picking, I'd rather have Michael Malone around than Calvin Booth. I think I think Michael Malone is a better coach than Calvin Booth as a general manager.
Okay, and that's fair because let's go through this. The pieces Tim did were the core four, okay? He drafted Nikola Jokic, he drafted Jamal Murray, he drafted Michael Porter Jr., he traded for Aaron Gordon. But what did Calvin do? You mentioned Will Barton. He turned Will Barton and Monte Morris into KCP.
He did.
He also signed Bruce Brown, and he drafted Christian Brown. So that was sort of the 7-man rotation. Jeff Green was in there as well to make the 8-man championship rotation. 4 of those pieces were Tim. 3 of those pieces were Calvin. And what 3 pieces got him over the top? KCP and Bruce Brown specifically. Mm-hmm. So Tim assembled the core, but Calvin tinkered better than Tim ever did.
You're right about that.
I'm playing a little devil's advocate here, but I think Calvin has a case to be made of Tim was all in on Will Barton. I turned him into KCP. Come on, guys. Bruce Brown wasn't getting phone calls. I convinced him to come to Denver. So, yeah, Tim deserves a ton of credit. I mean, drafting Nikola Jokic during a Taco Bell commercial. Jamal Murray, we've been over it. Gary Harris for Aaron Gordon's a coup. We get it. But Calvin's the one who got him over the top. Let's not act like Calvin has just totally rode Tim's coattails. He's been a part of this, too.
I like that, and you're right about the 3, but it's the old like chicken or egg, right? What comes first, the core or the reserves? That additions that Calvin made, great pieces, to your point, it doesn't matter if you don't have what that core is.
Of course not, but that's not Calvin's fault. He just wasn't in the role.
Fair.
I mean,
fair.
Calvin can't say, well, Tim drafted. Well, Calvin didn't have the opportunity to draft Nikola Jokic. He wasn't a GM at that point in his lifetime. So I get it. Yes, like no one is saying Tim Connolly is not the architect of the Nuggets championship, but Calvin Booth did lay some bricks as well, and he laid some pretty important bricks.
Well, and it's also, I mean, man, if you do fire Calvin Booth, now a GM job, there's only 30 of them in the entire world, just like NBA coaches, so it would still be an appeal. But you wonder what that looks like from the outside perception. All right, you're an aspiring GM. You come to the Nuggets, 3 max contracts, have to decide on Aaron Gordon. It would be that summer that the new guy would have to come in and decide on AG, and you're going to have to lowball Aaron Gordon because you just gave Jamal Murray another max deal. And then you certainly know that the Cronkies are not messing with the second tax apron. They're not alone in that, so I'm not crushing the Cronkies for that. That's just what they've shown us here throughout this offseason. So, you know what I mean? Is it easier to fill that role or a coach's role to come alongside and play with Nikola Jokic? It's just a fun conversation to have in the future.
No, it is. It is. But I think, and I understand it's going to be tough, I think I wouldn't rule out an AG deal getting done between now and the season. And I know that would be tough, and somehow, some way, you probably got to unload Zeke Naji. Like, we'll trade Zeke Naji for a bag of basketballs. But
yeah.
Remember
that contract I kept crying about not being a good one?
Yeah. It wouldn't shock me. And it's not the NFL. I get it. You can't do the gymnastics in the NBA. Like these aprons and all this stuff is pretty set in stone. But I mean, are you 100% convinced AG goes into this year on the last year of his deal, or do you think we could get? Unfortunately, we can't get a Woj bomb. We've got some Woj news in a little bit. But do you think we could get a Shams tweet, maybe out of nowhere in the next few weeks? Nuggets and Aaron Gordon have agreed on a 3-year blank extension.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility at all, but this is what I've been saying with the Jamal contract tied to it. If I were Aaron Gordon's agent, and I feel like this about everybody, I'm like, don't take a team-friendly deal. That's stupid. You're hurting yourself. I don't think Aaron Gordon should do that, and I think his agent's telling the same exact thing. And if his agent's worth anything, he would tell him, don't take a team-friendly deal. Let's see how the season plays out. Bet on yourself, and then we'll see if we have more leverage at the end of the year.
Maybe, but Aaron Gordon is a great player. Aaron Gordon has also thrived playing with Nikola Jokic.
He has.
He is not going to be the same player for another team. AG is at his best self playing with the best player in the world.
I agree with that. But if the Nuggets say here's $16 million per and the Rockets say here's 22, what do you pick?
I don't know. I don't know Aaron Gordon on a personal level. He's made a lot of.
What does Will Peterson pick?
Well, do I already have $100 million in the bank?
All right, okay,
right?
That's
like
fair.
You know, I never criticize guys for taking more money. I'm not that guy. But also, Aaron Gordon's made a ton of money. And what's more important to him at the end of the day? 2-3 championship rings or an extra $6 million a year? I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay,
and I wouldn't crush him either way. I wouldn't.
No.
I don't tell people to do with their money. But I do think there are guys out there that the rings are more important than the money when they've already made a lot of it.
I'm shallow enough to tell you, not for me. Give me that cash. Give me a briefcase full of hundreds. That's what I'm looking for.
How much do you need, I guess? Like what?
All of it.
You and I don't live in that world, though, bro. Like we don't have maybe your mind would change if you already had $100 million sitting in your bank account.
I might. Nuggets Nation, tell us how you feel and what you think that looks like. Malone or Booth, if they had to make a choice. 303-713-1043, RamosLaw.com text line. We'll go inside the internet. We learned a couple of things this morning inside the internet, including a new Nuggets uniform that was leaked. And, as Will mentioned, Woj bombs. They will be no more. Details next.